Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Boston-based veteran jazz guitarist Peter Janson. He got into his new 2022 CD, Getting to Hear, his long life in music, the future, COVID, and more. He has performed extensively throughout North America and is looking forward to the future with his new album. We cover some great ground. Enjoy the interview.
Hey, thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, and thank you for your interest. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. So, Getting to Hear is your new 2022 CD, and before we get to that album, I guess this is kind of a part of that, is that, we've lived through COVID the last couple of years has been rather tumultuous, and I'm curious how you did over that time and how relieving it is to have material out now that the world's kind of waking up and live gigs are happening again.
Wow. Well, the lockdown part was really difficult for me. In fact, I had at the beginning of it, when it started to look like it was going to sort of happen, and I started to realize that it was going to be longer than they originally were saying, I thought, okay, I'll use this time to really bear down on some songwriting or whatever, practicing something. And it didn't turn out that way for me, because somehow I just got into this funk, and I really, I couldn't practice. I wasn't playing for people. I get really inspired to perform for people. I love being on stage, and I love finding the contact that I have with other human beings. I couldn't do the streaming thing. It was a really, bad thing. So I had a real hard time coming out of it. I went down to Nashville to record an album a year ago in August of last year. And I hadn't played in 18 months or whatever, it seemed like a year and a half about at that point. It was a pretty, how can I put this tactfully? It showed how good the engineers are and the producers are in Nashville, that we ended up with something that would have been an album, because it certainly was on their part and not on my part. I was just playing it. It was horrible. So I was so frustrated, to give you an idea, that I actually drove straight back. When I wanted to get home so bad, I drove straight back from Nashville to Boston. It was like a 19-hour drive. I just did it. I fumed for a couple of days, and I sat with it, and I listened to what they did, which was fantastic work on their end, but it was a Frankenstein. And I called them up, and I said, just throw it all away, because it just wasn't me. It was a horrible thing compared to me. And so I just tried to get myself out of that psychological funk, because that's all it was. I just couldn't get my mind and my soul to be connected and playing music that was real, if you know what I mean by that. So I just put my nose back to work. And then this past March, I had a chance to get back again. And it kind of exemplifies for me that concept about what has COVID done, because for me personally on this end, it was finally something I had to fight my way through. I was impacted by it. It was pretty devastating for me. And I had to fight my way back to finding who I am again. And I think even socially, even now, I'm still a little bit hesitant when I get around a lot of people. I noticed that on a tour that I did back in May, and I noticed that it was still affecting me in some way. But by the time I got back to Nashville back in March, then these recordings, I was back, and it felt really good to be back, and it felt things were starting to feel more normal. I had fought my way through all the stuff, the psychological stuff that I had sort of been put into by myself and by the pandemic, and so these songs were the ones that I ended up doing, and they're all like straight takes, except for I should have just waited for Low, which obviously has overdubs, but all these songs were straight takes through, first or second take. I think there was one edit. I think one of the fast parts of Spain. That part that I think I missed one of those, and we went back and punched that kind of thing. But that kind of encapsulates in a broader sense, how I feel about how it affected me and some of the people that I know. You know, I've talked to a few people on that, and it seems to be pretty consistent. I bet you everybody went through something similar, although hopefully not as severe as what I.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of things that went into this. It was bad. There were silver linings, but ultimately, yeah, it was getting our worlds turned upside down. I'm curious with this recording, what are you hoping the listener, those that buy or download this album, get from what you put out?
Well, that's a great question, Joe. Thank you. I hope that they find something in it that helps them to have a better day or a better moment. You know, just whether it's you know a quick escape from a frustrating day or just a joy or some time to sit back and just be transported into something that's a little bit different, a little different space than where they were. That would be pretty cool to me if somebody were to dig it on that level. That would be a really wonderful thing. If they become a fan, that would be awesome. You know, I mean, that's like the ultimate to me is when someone comes up and they mention something that they enjoy my music.
So how did this journey begin for you into the music? Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and how, you know, guitar and jazz became your focal points. So
way back, I started playing guitar really young. I don't remember the exact year, but I remember my mom telling me that she thought I was either 6 or 7 years old when I started asking to get a guitar. And I kind of noodled around with it for a long time. And then I think that the way that I actually became a serious guitarist was maybe kind of unique. And that is that the Cleveland Indians baseball team, or what they used to be called, the Cleveland Indians baseball team, was responsible for me becoming a serious guitar player. And the reason this probably sounds so stupid, I'm sorry, man, but it's the truth. So for some reason, when I was a kid, you know, I loved the Indians, even though I grew up in Boston and the Red Sox, you know, were the team, and that's what exactly was the cause of this conflict that led me to this, and that was that. You know, I liked the Red Sox, and it was great, but for some reason, I have no explanation for this. The Cleveland Indians was like my team, and I used to take like T-shirts, and I would ask, you know, my mom if she would get me some of those markers, and I would draw like the Indian, the logo on my T-shirt, and then I'd go outside to play, and I'd get beat up, you know, because nobody, you know, it was like, what are you doing? You're a traitor, and I'd get beat up. I got beat up so many times that I finally decided that I wasn't going to play baseball with my friends. I was just going to play guitar. And so I would stay home, and I started to teach myself how to play guitar. And then I started, you know, trying to get lessons wherever I could. You know, I grew up in a working class family, so there wasn't an opportunity at a young age for me to take lessons or something professionally. But I started learning by ear and off of records and off the radio when I could and things like that. And then eventually, you know, it really sunk in and stuck. And I tell that story whenever I do a gig in Cleveland, and everybody seems to like it. It's the truth. It's like baseball led me, or the Cleveland Indians led me to my guitar playing. And I've been at it since.
That's a great story for sure. What was your first live jazz show that you saw that really blew you away, that inspired you?
Well, the first shows that really inspired, or the first jazz music that inspired me was not live. And it came in much earlier for me. I was still fairly young, and somebody, I don't remember who, I don't remember if it was my sister or a friend or whatever, they turned me on to a Return to Forever album. And it was just Return to Forever self-titled. And it's one with Flora Purim on vocals. And it was kind of like everything that I knew about music all of a sudden became different. It showed me these sounds and harmonies and melodies and rhythms that that really opened me up, and that became the music and the moment that was really super inspiring for me. And then from that point on, it became any time that I could catch a gig with Chick Corea, then that would be something that I really loved. And I've seen a bunch of his concerts, various kinds, everything from solo concerts to his electric bands and stuff like that. He was one of the ones that really meant a lot to me. But the first live jazz stuff that I heard was just locally in the Boston area at a club that was called Riles. They're no longer in business. They didn't survive. And it was some local jazz musicians. Berkeley College is here in Boston area, and so there's a plethora of jazz musicians out, and it was just really something to see this guy. His name was Mick Goodrick, and he was a kind of local guitar legend. I don't know about in your area or throughout the world, but I saw him, and it was really an inspiring. It was just everything that at that time in my life, it was like everything that I was striving towards with the ideas of creativity and improvisation and melodic control and harmonic complexity and things. It was spectacular for me. It was a really fun concert. And then the number of them just goes on. It goes on and on and on. I just the other night, I got to see Brian Blade and the Fellowship Band up at Jimmy's Jazz and Blues Club up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is not very far from here. And it was an outstanding concert. I mean, it was just spectacular, and still to this day, when I hear jazz musicians that connect to me, man, it still is so super inspiring.
So what is it that you like the best about this process of being a professional musician? I mean, clearly you got to wake up every day and create music, and there's a myriad of things that go into it, but what do you look forward to the most?
That's a tough question for me, actually. I don't know that I've thought about it in those terms. Sharing, being able to play my music for others, and to meet them. It's one of the joys of traveling and touring, is to meet them and, say hi to them and find out a little bit about them. Things like that seem to me to be something I really need to have, is a connection to other people. And music seems to bring that for me. I can't imagine, doing anything else. I don't know that I don't think I could. It was one of the things I had to go through during COVID, was to think about whether the universe was saying time to give up and change direction or something like that. And I just can't imagine not having music in my life on a daily basis. But the biggest joy of that is the meeting of other people. And it doesn't, even for yourself, Joe, and starting to find out more and more about neon jazz and your interview series, and then discovering interviews that I didn't know existed. That to me is all connected to this same part of me as a musician, and it's fantastic to experience this stuff, On your end, you may not like it, but if I play a gig, somewhere around Kansas City, man, I'm going to be calling you up and going, hey, man, you want to get together for coffee after the show,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's one of the benefits of doing this, is that I always find that the connection to the jazz community has been something that has been wholly unexpected to me. I've seen a lot of walks of life, and I have never met a better group of human beings than jazz musicians. You are the most talented, humble, grounded, and willing to pass that torch on without ego in a way that I've never seen in any other person on the planet.
Well, that's so nice to hear, and thank you for saying that. I try to live up to that in my own way, every single day as a human being. And it's interesting that you say that because, there was a Chick Corea tribute, he passed away a couple of years ago, and there was a tribute, down at the Rose Theater in the Lincoln Center in New York City, a while back, several months back. And I went to that and everybody was there, man. I mean, it was like, Herbie was there, Patitucci was there, Brian Blade, Hubert Laws, if I'm sure you know who all these people are. Renee Rosnes was there. The list just went on and on and on, And when they get up to speak about Chick, every single one of them mentioned that, without exception, every single one of them mentioned that one of the most important things about Chick Corea to them was how he helped them be better human beings. And that's been my experience for the jazz musicians that I meet too. It's a really humbling and exciting thing to experience. So I understand what you're saying, and I feel the same way about it.
I've been kind of branching out, interviewing different kinds of people for a little bit now, and I was talking to someone that is in academia, and I just kind of talked about jazz musicians in the way I just described. And she just had no idea, she does a lot of consulting with businesses and was like, that is so inspiring, and wanted to know more and wanted to know if anything was written or elongated on it. I don't know that part of the jazz community has been talked about. I think it's something that musicians probably feel that way about the community and journalists do, but I don't know how widespread it is. But the thing to me that gets me is that it starts at the top. Those that are the highest level of legends have just kind of continued to spread this notion that jazz will be something that will teach people and that will inherently be something that's good for people, and it's always passed on. It's like it just continues to gain good steam.
Well, what a blessing to be in your position and get to interview people and such, man. That's wonderful that you extract these awarenesses out of that and connect them. That's beautiful, man. I hope that people can. I hope that I think that music in general can really be something that brings people together, and I know that it has been that way for me and for people that I know that I've spoken with about it. And I hope that in some ways that my music can do that, of course, too, that connection to people. Wonderfully said there, Joe. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And so my question to you is my next question. When I kind of think about your career, what have you learned from those veterans or elder statesmen that you've been around that you in turn teach younger musicians that you get to play with?
That's a magnificent question. To be true to yourself. That's the thing, whether or not I have or they have financial success. And of course, everybody needs to make money. I get that, and I'm not talking about that. But it's like, to the best blessing that we can have, I think, as human beings is to be allowed to be ourselves, our true selves, and then as a musician to be able to express that through your art, and connect to other people and connect to who they are, that's the thing that I get from interviews and the music of the elders, and I try to pass that on to my guitar students. Excuse me. And I try to pass that on to my guitar students and hope that they understand that, and then also the joy of improvisation, and the freedom of it. That ability to really play something and have it be that this is how I feel it today. This is how I understand it today. This is how I hope to be able to connect with you today. Those kinds of things. And as a solo guitarist, I have a little bit of a difficulty sometimes with getting in a stream of really creative improvisation. So with all of my tunes, I learned them as compositions, and I memorized them as compositions first. And if I have a day where it's just not happening, it's like, I can fall back on that and know that I've got these bag of tricks that I use that have been put together in an honest way, and I can present that. But most of the time, that's like a 1 song or 2 song kind of thing, and then I get in the flow, and then I can be free and open. And those are things that I learned from meeting the players that I've met, and on gigs and stuff like that, and from lessons and from the music that connects to me. And I try to pass that on to my students. That, and to not be worried about being human, to not worry about making a mistake or having a flaw, in something, or having it not be as good tonight as it was last night or something like that. To not think in those kinds of terms is what I mean by that. And those are all things that I think are really important for passing along inside of the music tradition.
So if you have a dream tonight and you run into a younger version of yourself, say in your 20s, and you could give that younger version a piece of advice based on the wisdom that you've accumulated throughout your life, what would you tell your younger version?
Well, I think I would tell them first, never date a singer. That would be the first kind of thing that I would say. We all have these jokes, don't we? We could have, all musicians I know say something similar to that. They'll say, never date the drummer, never date the guitarist, never date the singer, whatever the case is. And that's all fun, of course. I would say just chill a little bit more, to me, back then. That would be my main thing. If you just chill a little bit more. And I think things work out best when we're kind of relaxed and allow ourselves to not stress, especially over things that we have no control over.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of who you are. Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a musician who tries to be the best human being that they can be every day. And I don't know if anybody sees me that way, in a regular concert situation or something like that. On a very personal level, I try to be a good person, and I try to be open and non-judgmental as much as possible. I think that really sums it up. I just try to be the best person I can be, Joe. And some days I get to reach that goal.
Beautiful. Peter, this has been great, man. Thank you for opening up. Thank you for the music. Good luck with everything as we move forward.
Joe, thank you so much, and good luck for you with Neon Jazz, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's so nice to meet you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Boston, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Peter for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.